Prosecutors are often referred to as ministers of justice. Today you will hear my sermon about good versus evil, right versus wrong, about justice for that man, Timothy Coggins. Ms. Broder did say in her opening that we can atone for the sins of the past, and we can. And we can right the wrongs in this case. To say that the investigation in 1983 was bad is an understatement. It was horrific. It was shameful. This case should have been in this courtroom 34 years ago, but it wasn't. It's here before you today. A murder closed after 2 months. Really, after 2 weeks. Unheard of. Wrong. Investigators not following up on leads that are given to them. Not sharing information. Losing evidence. Being taken off of murder to investigate a torn down mailbox. It's no wonder that the sentiment was that Timothy Coggins was another dead black man. Because he was. He was. This was just another dead black man until this agent, this captain, the GBI, and the Spalding County Sheriff's Office got the case and began to right the wrong. They began to interview witnesses, and they interviewed Christopher Vaughn. Christopher Vaughn, a child molester, a convicted child molester. And Christopher Vaughn tells Agent Coleman and Captain Morris that Franklin Gebhardt, Bill Moore, Mickey Guy, and a black male that he didn't know were arguing on October 7th, 1983, in the early morning hours of Saturday morning or late hours of Friday night. He's about 10 years old at the time. But he remembered. And a couple of days later, he and Willard Sanders and Charles Carey found the body. And then a couple of weeks later, while at a party at Willard Sanders' house, he hears Frankie Gebhardt admit to killing Timothy Coggins. And on numerous occasions, he hears Frankie Gebhardt admit to killing that nigger and stabbing him 25 to 30 times. He admits this to Christopher Vaughn. He admits to throwing the knife into his well and the clothing. Now, how can you believe Christopher Vaughn? He's a convicted child molester. You can believe him because no one knew at the time that Frankie Gebhardt told Christopher Vaughn about killing Timothy Coggins. No one knew the number of times that Timothy Coggins had been stabbed. That wasn't released in the media. There's no newspaper articles about that, ladies and gentlemen. That's a detail only the killer knows. At the crime scene, the body of Timothy Coggins was missing shoes, shirt, and socks. This was found in the well, ladies and gentlemen. A red Argyle sock. A sock that Timothy Coggins was wearing, but not a poll order from 1983. You're not going to see Frankie Gebhardt wearing a red Argyle sock. Also found in the well was a one knife handle with 2 blades and a chain and a shoe. Now, I'm going to come back and talk about all of this evidence again, but you can believe Christopher Vaughn because everything that Frankie Gebhardt told him was in the well was in the well. Now, I want you to remember the audio recording of Christopher Vaughn and Frankie Gebhardt in that cell. You know, Mr. Lee failed to mention this one thing. When Christopher Vaughn tells Frankie Gebhardt, "I just told them what I know," what was Frankie Gebhardt's response? "I sure hope you didn't. I sure hope you didn't." Believe Christopher Vaughn because he is believable. Are there inconsistencies in his statements? Yes. But you can believe it. Later on, Frankie says, "Words ain't worth a shit. They got to prove it." Words are worth something, and they condemn him, and we have proof. You can believe Christopher Vaughn. No deals have been made by my office with a convicted child molester, and for Mr. Lee to come up here and say that, it's basically saying I'm a liar. There's been no deals made. I don't make deals with child molesters. His statements are corroborated by the evidence. Believe him. Believe Warren Tillman, the medical examiner. He testified that Tim had over 30 wounds to his body. He had blunt force trauma and sharp force trauma to his head. He had incised wounds. He had stab wounds. He had abrasions all about his body. He had cocoa bears and mud matted in his hair. This was consistent with having been drugged behind a vehicle. Mr. Tillman testified that Tim's lungs had been punctured. He could have died by choking on his own blood or bled out from the number of injuries he had. 30 plus wounds. It was a vicious, violent, brutal death. Painful. The crime scene screams anger, hatred, evil. Believe Mr. Tillman. Believe Jesse Gates, who told you about the racial climate here in Spalding County in 1983, how a black man dating a white woman was not accepted. Not when Ku Klux Klan rallies were occurring, Ku Klux Klan parades were happening in this community. You see, Jesse Gates warned Timothy Coggins that dating a white woman would be dangerous. And he was right. He was right. He testified that he picked him up and took him to the People's Choice Club, and when he dropped him off, there was 3 white males out in front. And he testified that the woman that Tim talked about had brown hair and hazel blue eyes. If you recall that. Not just hazel eyes, as Mr. Lee would have us think, hazel blue eyes. Believe Jesse Gates. Believe Talisa Coggins, the sister of Tim. She testified that a white woman had been frequenting the club. Tim had been dancing with her. Tim loved to party. Never met a stranger. I can see Tim dancing. The last night that she saw Tim, a white man had come into the People's Choice Club looking for him, and she tried to make her way through the crowd, but she was too late. Tim had left. She never saw him again. Never saw him again. Now, she also testified that Tim had a pair of shoes similar to the shoe that was found in the well Frankie Gebhardt's house. A shoe that's burnt, a size 10 shoe, the same size that Timothy Coggins wore. An Adidas shoe. In 1983, a poor porter is not wearing an Adidas shoe. He's wearing a pair of steel-toed boots. He's not wearing an Adidas shoe, ladies and gentlemen. That's not his shoe. You can infer that it's Timothy Coggins' shoe, and it's burnt because he tried to destroy the evidence. And you can believe Linda Cook. Miss Cook testified that at an after party, after the People's Choice Club closed, that she saw Tim and 3 white men, and that he was on his way to Sunnyside. She couldn't pick anyone out of the lineup, but she said that one of the white males had long black hair. Look at this picture of Frankie Gebhardt back then. Long black hair. Miss Cook has no motive to lie. And you can believe Sammy Freeman. Sammy testified that he got a phone call from Tim in the night of Friday, October 7th, and he was with Frankie Gebhardt. See, Sammy and Tim knew Frankie Gebhardt. They went to school with him. And does it really surprise you that the fact that he got this phone call didn't show up in a report? Really? Does that really surprise you? Because it doesn't surprise me. You can believe Robert Smith. He has no motive to lie. He said himself, he gets out in 30 days. I make no deals with Robert Smith. He testified that he and Frankie and Bill would party together, and that he had seen Tim out there in the trailer park on numerous occasions, 3 out of 5. And at one time, Tim came running to the trailer being chased by Frankie Gebhardt and Bill Moore. And later on, Frankie Gebhardt admitted to killing Tim Coggins on multiple occasions. He admitted that to Robert Smith. And he told Robert Smith the reason he killed Tim Coggins was because he'd been with a white woman. Believe Robert Smith. He has no motive to lie. And you can believe Clint Phillips and Oscar Jordan. They both testified that there wasn't sharing of evidence. Dan Green said that today. The sheriff's office at that time couldn't focus on this case. And that's obvious. Even Clint Phillips testified that this case was solvable back then. We can atone for the sins of the past. We can right the wrongs. Instead, Timothy Coggins was just another dead black man. You can believe Larry Peterson, who testified about the crime scene. Yes, a Jack Daniels bottle was located there, a broken wood table leg, a sweater, hairs from a white person, hairs from a black person. And yes, it's all missing now. But hold that against me, for I speak for the state. Hold that against me. Don't hold it against him. Don't hold it against him. Don't hold it against Sheriff Dixon. Don't hold it against this family. Hold it against me. Atone for the sins, right the wrongs. And Larry also testified about these hairs that Timothy Coggins could have brought these hairs to the crime scene from some other place. You bring stuff to a crime scene, you leave with stuff from the crime scene. And that's what he testified to. And he testified about finding the jeans, the underwear, the rock, all consistent with drag marks located at that crime scene and the injuries to Tim Coggins' body. The underwear and the jeans were tested by the GBI crime lab. DNA was recovered, and that DNA belongs to Tim Coggins. The blood on the sheet was placed on Tim Coggins after the murder occurred, after the perpetrator left the crime scene. The blood on the sheet matches the blood on the jeans, which matches the blood on the underwear. It's Tim Coggins' blood. You can believe Jim Sebastian. He testified that the items recovered from the well couldn't be tested because they've been exposed to organic material for 35 years. And yes, the process that the GBI and our office used to recover this evidence, we knew it would hamper DNA testing. Well, let me tell you, had we not gone into the well, then Mr. Lee would be up here saying, well, you should have went into the well. You know, that's a red herring, and it's meant to take your attention away from his client right there. You can believe Willard Sanders. It doesn't get much more matter of fact than Willard Sanders. He certainly has no motive to lie. He grew up with Frankie Gebhardt. He's not in jail. He's not facing any charges. What motive does he have to lie? He doesn't. And he's testified that Frankie admitted to him on one occasion that he had killed Tim Coggins. Believe Terry Reed. Believe it. Terry Reed and Frankie Gebhardt are in a cell together when a news report comes on after the first search warrant at Frankie's house. And what does Frankie say? Frankie says, they won't find any DNA on any knife because he threw the knife he used down the well. And he also said that Frankie had approximately 61 knives. How did he know that? That wasn't in any news meeting. That detail was never released. That's a detail only he knew. That corroborates Terry Reed's story. Believe Terry Reed. He has no motive to lie. Again, I've made no deals with anybody that's testified on that stand. Believe Terry Reed. You can believe Jonathan Bennett. I mean, did you notice when he took the stand how nervous and scared he was when he testified? He didn't want to be up there. He has no motive to lie. He wasn't even alive when this crime occurred. And again, he testifies that Frankie had bragged about killing Timothy Coggins. You can believe Jonathan Bennett. And then there's Patrick Douglas. Patrick Douglas, a member of the Aryan Brotherhood, a white supremacist group. It only makes sense that Frankie Gebhardt would feel comfortable talking to Patrick Douglas. Patrick Douglas testified that Frankie's in the Ku Klux Klan, a Kluckster. And Patrick testified that while both of them were incarcerated, Frankie made a statement, they won't find my DNA on that Jack Daniels bottle. And this is important, ladies and gentlemen, because nobody knew that a Jack Daniels bottle had been recovered from that crime scene. You won't find it in any news article. The only person that knew that there was a Jack Daniels bottle at that crime scene was the killer, was somebody that was there, was Frankie Gebhardt. Furthermore, Patrick testified that Frankie was going to go around and tell his cellmates that different versions of what happened. And that's what the defense is relying on. Frankie Gebhardt did exactly that. And I want to point out something because I think it's very important. Christopher Bond, Terry Reed, and Charlie Sturgill all took a stand and said that Frankie had told them that he cut Tim Coggin's penis off and stuck it in his mouth. All three of them testified to that. Charlie Sturgill's been in federal prison for 16 years. He didn't get together with Christopher Bond or Terry Reed. He said it. Maybe he wanted to do it to Timothy Coggins. Maybe he thought he did. And do you really think that Robert Smith, Christopher Bond, Jonathan Bennett, Willard Sanders, Terry Reed, Patrick Douglas, and Charlie Sturgill have gotten together and created this grand conspiracy to convict Frankie Gebhardt? Do you really believe that? Willard Sanders is not in jail. Jonathan Bennett wasn't alive in 1983. And if you think that Terry Reed and Patrick Douglas socialized, then you're sorely mistaken. Where there's smoke, there's fire, ladies and gentlemen. I brag about accomplishments of my kids. He brags about killing Timothy Coggins. He wears it as a badge of honor when it is a badge of hate. And let's talk about the evidence that we do have. You know, evidence may have been lost in this case, but Franklin Gebhardt did a good job of keeping up with the evidence for us. Christy Fralick testified that there were 61 knives recovered from that table. 61 knives. A fact Terry Reed knew. A fact only the killer knew. A fact that was never released and needed. Let's look at some of these knives. There's a rusty butcher knife. A knife that you would throw down the well, maybe. Plenty of knives in this bag. Here's a knife, kind of bent on the end. 61 knives. There's only one knife found in that well. Only one knife found in that well. You know why that knife's in that well? Because it was used to stab Timothy Coggins over 30 times. None of the rest of these knives, these rusty ones, these bent ones, they were not found in the well. One knife. One knife with a single blade, not a serrated blade, a single blade, consistent with what Mr. Tillman told you, consistent with the wounds on Timothy Coggins. And then you have the evidence from the second search warrant, and Agent Stewart testified about that. Again, the shoe, similar to the one Timothy Coggins had, burnt, same size as his foot size. Chain. Tools of the trade for a pulpwooder. Pulpwooder's not going to throw a good chain down the well unless it was used in a crime. That's the tools of his trade. And you don't use a logging chain to pull up water from a well. And then the sheriff, you know, Timothy Coggins He's not wearing a shirt at the crime scene. A shirt that's partially burnt, has tears in it consistent with the drag mark, with linear holes at the bottom of the shirt consistent with being stabbed. It's unrebutted that that shirt has tears and holes in it consistent with someone being stabbed and drugged down a power line on Minna Road. And you know, Mr. Lee said in closing that, you know, someone who stabbed someone 30 plus times could expect to be hurt. They would be bleeding too. Well, I submit to you, the reason that shirt is in that well is because not only did it have Tim's blood on it, but it also had Frankie's on it too. And he tried to get rid of it. And then there's the interview with Frankie Gebhardt. And, you know, Mr. Lee has made a big deal about Frankie having a 6th grade education. You know, Frankie told Christopher Vaughn that he was going to play dumb. He told that to Patrick Douglas. But if you remember that interview, ladies and gentlemen, he manipulated that interview. He's not dumb. He showed his true colors. The hatred, the anger, evilness spewed from his mouth. Hatred, anger, evilness. It's alive and well in this courtroom today. It resides within him right now. Words ain't worth a shit to Frankie Gebhardt, but his own words have condemned him. The hatred, the anger, the evilness. He wears it like a badge of honor, when really it's a badge of hate. We can atone for the sins of the past. We can right the wrongs. This crime screams anger. It screams hatred. But make it scream justice. And then you heard from Charles Sturgill this morning. Mr. Sturgill's in federal prison. He gets out within a year. I have no jurisdiction. I can't help him. I made no deals with him. He has no motive to lie. He has no motive to lie. He's been in jail for 16 years. He's not been around Patrick Douglas or Terry Reed. Atone for the sins of the past. You know, they say time heals all wounds. But in order to heal a wound, you got to have closure. You got to have closure. Give this family closure. Give this crime closure. Give Timothy Coggins justice. You find that man right there guilty on all counts.